Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Michelle. I'm a licensed hairstylist with over 20 years of experience, and my channel is all about using that experience to help you have healthy, happy hair. So in today's video, I'm going to talk about the curly girl method and why I don't follow it, both personally and also as a hairstylist. Now, I'm going to preface this by saying that everybody's hair is different. Every person is different. And if you follow this method and this is what works for you, then by all means continue to use the curly girl method. However, if you've tried to use the curly girl method and you've struggled, you find that it's too restrictive, it's got too many rules, or there's too many things to avoid, it's too confusing, or maybe your hair just, you haven't seen the improvement that you thought you'd see, and in some ways maybe it's even looking worse. If you're struggling with the curly girl method, then maybe watch this video and that might help give you some ideas as to why you're struggling with this method and that maybe it's something that does not work for you. So I've got notes in front of me so that I can be sure that I address everything and don't forget what I want to talk about. So first we'll start off with what the curly girl method is. It's a method of caring for naturally curly hair, and it was a book written by Lorraine Massey, I believe in 1994 is when she wrote this book, or when it was published. And at the time, it was early 90s, and so like the 80s was all about perming hair and big perms, and hair was really dry and people were washing their hair all the time. They were using a lot of products that really built up on their hair, and then then the 90s came in and we started moving more and more towards straightened hair and away from curly hair, and we were still washing our hair every single day, and a lot of these things that we were doing with our hair were in fact causing a lot of buildup. Aquanet, I know, was a really big contributor to buildup. I had a lot of clients that would come in and it was literally gum to their hair. And so this is where things were before this book was written and around the time when it was written, and that's around the time, and I believe it, I could be wrong. If I'm wrong, I'll go ahead and put it on the bottom here as to when it came out. But this is what was going on at the time. I got licensed to be a hairstylist at that time. I started working in the salon in 1994, in late 1994. And so these are the things that were happening, and there was a big shift in how things were done in the 80s and then going into the 90s. And there were a lot of really, really harsh stripping, drying shampoos. However, things were starting to get better, and certainly in the professional products, out of all the ones that I had tried during that time, they were definitely leaps and bounds better than anything that you could find in the drugstore at that time as far as not stripping hair. So that's just to give you a background and my experience as a hairdresser who worked right around the time that this method and this book came out. This is a method that heavily borrowed from the Black community and how they cared for their hair for a lot longer than what this has been out. So I'm prefacing that so that you know the background and where everything is coming from. I'm going to start with the list in front of me of what to avoid. So it says to avoid shampoo. I don't avoid shampoo. I use shampoo. I don't recommend avoiding shampoo. You need to clean your hair and you need to clean your scalp. And the reason being is things build up on your hair and your scalp. And it's not just the products that you're putting into it, but if you think about the environment that you're in, especially if you live in an urban environment and there's pollution and dirt and all that is getting on your hair, and you need to be able to clean that off. And you need a cleanser to get that off, because using a conditioner to wash your hair, there's not enough surfactant in there to be able to clean your hair and get a lot of those things off. And then you have your oils up at your scalp. And if you think of it this way, if you were to put some oil on your skin, like put olive oil on there and then try to use a lotion to clean off the olive oil or any other oil, it's not going to come off because you're using an emollient to try to get off an emollient. So you're not getting that off of there. And if you have a lot of emollient products and oils and everything building up on your scalp, you can clog your hair follicles. Clogging your hair follicles can cause hair loss. And that's generally something that a lot of people want to avoid. Shampooing your hair also cleans the things off of your hair strands that can cause the buildup. And the reason you want that taken off is because your hair can dry from the inside out, because it's got this big, thick barrier on it, so moisture can't get in to your hair. So it'll just continue to dry from the inside out. So shampooing your hair is really good for both your scalp and for your hair strands in order to keep them nice and clean. You don't have to necessarily use a sulfate shampoo, and there is a difference between sodium lauryl sulfate and sodium laureth. Sodium lauryl is definitely a little bit harsher than laureth, and then there are other cleansers that work to cleanse and get these things off. And Mains by Mel actually did a great experiment where she put a ton of silicone on the hair and used a sulfate-free shampoo and a sulfate shampoo to try to clean it off, and then tested it by running the blade of her shears down the strands to see if she could get buildup. Both of them took the buildup off. So as long as you're using a shampoo with a cleanser that can remove it instead of using just a conditioner to get it off. So that's where I'm at with shampoo. I definitely shampoo my hair, and I wholeheartedly recommend using shampoo to clean your hair. The next one is heat. And for this one, presumably the problem is that heat damages hair, which we definitely know. It does damage hair. However, you can use heat and not damage your hair. I use my diffuser on high heat and high speed every time I use it, and there's a trick to doing it to safely use heat. And even as a hairdresser, when I would use curling irons on people's hair and flat irons on people's hair, there is a way to be able to use those tools safely and not cause excess damage to your hair. There's heat protectants that you can use to help protect your hair against damage from heat. So it's just being mindful of how you're using those tools, and also being mindful of using protectant type products and not overusing heat. Combs and brushes. I use combs and brushes all the time. I have a wide tooth comb that I use to detangle my hair. I just recently bought a detangler, a detangling brush, because I do actually brush my hair out when it is dry. And you can do that, just so long as you're doing it correctly and you're starting from the bottom and working your way up very slowly. I like to brush out the shed hairs before I get in the shower, because I don't like having those shed hairs get literally everywhere. And I also brush and comb it when I'm in the shower to further detangle it when I have conditioner in my hair. And I love also the feeling of a brush on my scalp. And in fact, brushing your scalp is good for your scalp and gets the blood flow going, which is also really good for your hair, because you get the blood flow going to your hair follicles, and you've got nice healthy follicles with that blood flow going there. Healthy follicles grow healthy hair. So brushing can actually be good for your hair, so long as you do it correctly and you're not just ripping from your roots to your end. So another thing it says to avoid is fragrance. I like fragrance in products. What I don't like is fragrance in products that are overly scented, and the only thing that I can smell is my hair. But I don't mind products having fragrance. I'm assuming that the reason why they say not to use fragrance is because of the different ingredients that can cause allergies, not just from the fragrance itself, but also like skin allergies. So if it hits your scalp and you're allergic to whatever it is in the fragrance that they've used, and that could be anything. So that would be a reason to avoid fragrance. So if you're sensitive to fragrance, by all means, avoid fragrance. Like, I totally get that. All right, so the other one it says to avoid is sulfate, which I talked about with the shampoo a little bit, and that sulfates can be a little bit drying, and that's why I recommend that, if you're worried about the drying aspects of a sulfate shampoo, maybe wash your hair with it once a week and use a cleansing conditioner in between, or use a non-sulfate shampoo in between. Go back and forth and make sure that you're using a really good conditioner. But sulfates are not as evil as they're made out to be. You can get shampoo that has sulfates in it, and the other ingredients that are put in there along with the sulfates help to offset some of the more drying effects of the sulfate. And yeah, I use sulfates. And I used sulfates on my clients, and I don't see that it's caused enough damage for me to say that that's something you should avoid. Okay, so it also says to avoid non-water soluble silicones, presumably because you're not shampooing your hair, so you want something that just rinses out of it. The problem here is that, yes, silicones can build up. It's an emollient product, but so are butters and oils. They're emollients as well. And silicones behave exactly the same way as the other emollients do. And those other emollients, those butters and oils, can also build up on your hair and do build up on your hair just as easily as the silicones can. Your hair can't tell the difference between the natural or the synthetic molecules between, using natural butters versus the silicones. Your hair will accept it and treat it as if it's exactly the same thing, just because the molecules behave the same way. And as far as silicones building up on hair, yes, there are some that build up a little bit more than others. So long as you're washing it out of your hair and not just trying to rinse it, you're good to go. And I mentioned that experiment earlier that Maine's by Mel did, that a non-sulfate shampoo definitely cleaned all of the silicones, and she really loaded that hair with a ton of different silicones, like loaded it. So, and it still got it off of there. I like silicones, first of all, because they do provide some protection against heat. They're a great heat protectant. And I also like them because I find them to make my hair a little bit more manageable than the natural butters tend to be. So anything with the silicone in it tends to make my hair a lot softer, more manageable, more pliable, and tends to hold down the frizz and gives me some really great shine. I just find that the manageability I get from silicones is not the same manageability that I'll get from butters. I'm not saying that those are bad or that I don't like them or don't use them. I use them as well, but I really like how my hair responds to silicones, so I'm going to keep using them. The next one is alcohol. And sometimes I see on here that they have non-drying alcohol, and it's hard to know the difference. You have to spend a lot of time researching ingredients or be a chemist to know that not all alcohols are drying. And also, here's the other problem that I have with alcohol and avoiding alcohol. Alcohol a lot of time is used to emulsify the oils and the water phases of a product. So if you have a product that has both a water phase and an oil phase, and most of them do because they usually have the water in there, and then they might have like the more emollient type ingredients like butters and oils and that type of thing. And in order to get those to mix, because water and oil don't mix, right? So in order to get those to mix together, you need to have an emulsifying agent. And a lot of alcohols work really well for emulsifying the two and getting the two to stay together so that your product isn't constantly separating into its oil and water phase and staying completely separate. Okay, so a good example of what I'm talking about with the two separate phases, the oil and water phase, is this Wedad Advanced Climate Control Restore and Revive Biphase, and it's a refreshing spray. And you can see here that it is separated because oil and water do not mix. And putting an emulsifier in here would cause the two to mix. And I don't know why they kept it separate. Maybe they kept it separate as just simply part of the product or whatever. But in order to get the two to go together, they do combine once you shake them. However, without an emulsifying agent, they will just go back to being completely separate. Alcohols tend to be able to do that. And sometimes there are alcohols that do other things in these chemical or in these products as well. Their function is to help out another ingredient, or once it mixes with the other ingredients and it has its chemical reaction to cause things to mix better or to create a different ingredient that is beneficial for the hair, and then the alcohol evaporates off or becomes something else and it is no longer alcohol. So in the finished product, you may not have the alcohol left in it, but because it was used as part of producing this product, it still needs to be listed as an ingredient, even though it's no longer in there, and it's no longer going to have a drying effect on your hair because it's basically gone. So that's my issue with alcohol being listed as something that you need to avoid. Now, if you see that alcohol is listed as one of the very first ingredients in something like hairspray, yep, that's probably pretty drying and you should probably avoid using that. A lot of times alcohol is used as a carrier molecule to get the hairspray itself through the air and onto your hair. So a lot of times it'll evaporate before it gets to your hair. So these are some of the things that are right in front of me. And I know that the Curly Girl method has kind of changed and evolved and grown into kind of its own beast. Like there's modified Curly Girl, there's Curly Girl for wavy hair, there's a lot of different things that go along with the Curly Girl method, but these are the big ones to avoid, and I don't avoid any of them. As a professional hairstylist, I don't see that any of these can cause enough of a problem to completely avoid them. With a few of them, you just need to make some adjustments and be a little bit more careful with them. Like selecting the sulfates that you're using or the shampoo that you're using. With combs and brushes, be gentle when you comb and brush your hair. So yeah, I would just say that if the Curly Girl method works for you and you don't have a problem following all of these rules and checking all of the ingredients to make sure that everything is 100% Curly Girl method approved, then by all means, follow the Curly Girl method. You know, if you're not having any issues with it, then that's great. That's absolutely wonderful. What matters at the end of the day is that you have a healthy scalp, healthy hair. That's all that matters. But if you happen to be somebody who's having a very difficult time trying to follow the Curly Girl method, or you don't see that it's doing a whole lot for you, that maybe using a lot of these ingredients that they suggest to use are weighing your hair down a whole lot, especially if you're just using conditioner to wash your hair, then you're using it to condition your hair, and then you're using a heavy leave-in conditioner, and you're using all these heavy styling products. It just might be a little bit too much for your hair. If you have wavy hair, if you have loose curls, especially if you have fine hair, because that actually matters more than your curl type as far as weighing your hair down. And these are the reasons why I do not follow the Curly Girl method and the rules that I break, which are basically all of them. But as always, you do you. You do what works best for your hair. If you're looking for something different or you want to try something different and any of this advice helped you, then I have achieved my goal here, which was basically just to address those of you who do struggle with it, and those of you who are wondering what you're doing wrong. Chances are you may not be doing something wrong. It's just none of these things worked for you, or maybe a few things don't work for you. So if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more content like this, go ahead and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you know when I have new videos coming out. Also, feel free to leave me a comment down below. Ask me questions. Let me know if there's things that you'd like to see. Just say hi, whatever. And as always, thanks for watching. Bye.